Welcome to the Victory Multisport podcast. This is Coach Sarge, and I'm here with Coach Scott.
Hey there.
And Coach Kenny.
Hey, what's up, Sarge?
Hey, how you doing? So we're so glad to have everybody back on the episode 3 of the podcast. And the first and foremost thing that we wanted to bring out today was a huge thank you to our veterans, given this is Veterans Day weekend. We wanted to thank those that are currently serving, those that have served as veterans, and those that have paid the ultimate sacrifice and are no longer with us, that led the way, and that, protect those that cannot protect themselves and provide the way of life that we have to be able to do the things that we love to do here in the United States. We have several athletes that currently serve. We have some that are veterans that continue to serve their communities where they live and work. And we thank them as well on this Veterans Day weekend. We have a couple of things on tap today. First and foremost, we're going to talk about some of the athletes' accomplishments that have happened recently. We actually have a special announcement of something that just happened today that we want to bring up later. And then we wanted to get into a little bit about prep and about taper, because we have a huge race coming up a week from today with Coach Kenny, Sniper, and Harley all going after the Ironman Arizona 140.6 in Tempe next Sunday, and getting geared up. And Kenny's ready to fight, right? Fight
ready to go.
Sandwich here. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Kenny to bring up what's going on in October.
Yeah, so a lot of good stuff, but really highlighting the one race would have been the Worlds with the women and the men's. So in that race, kicked off on a Friday, we had Em and Kim, and to say that race would have been tough, to say the least. The weather was hard. I think, Sarge, you were actually on site.
I was.
Give us a description of what you felt. It's just as a
I was
spectator.
freezing to death, actually. So the going out that morning on Friday for the women's championship, the air temperature was 37 degrees. We were on an asphalt parking lot up at the state park, and the wind was moving a little bit, but it wasn't too bad. But it was really, really chilly to imagine going and climbing down that chute and jumping in a lake and making a swim and so forth. The good news, bad news. The good news was the water temp was 25 degrees warmer than the air. So if you could manage your prep out on the shore and get your mind right about what you were about to do, it all kind of worked out there for the first iteration, the swim portion.
So that 30 to 35 minutes was comfortable. That was good.
Ooh, it was tough. So, they'd given out the Mylar blankets to a lot of the athletes. They were using them in all forms and fashion. I saw somebody tying them on their feet just to have something on their feet after they put their wetsuit on. I saw them wearing them as a cap or a bonnet to try to keep some body heat in from their head. There was a lot of throwaway sweatshirts and flip-flops and everything else flying at the chute area. But our athletes did well. They had some throwaway gear. They had prepared well for those conditions, and they got themselves ready to go. They had their pre-swim snacks with them, and we worked through all of the things that needed to be done that morning, and they got in the chute, and they were ready to roll. And their swim times were phenomenal for both of them. They did great out there. I will say that they both talked about that it was the Worlds, and it brought people from all over the country. It really brought the best of the best, and so it brought a lot of ego.
Oh yeah,
and even in the water, there was I don't want to say punching and kicking, but there was a lot of crashing and bumping and movement and a lot of jockeying, I guess, in the water. So they said it was, from that perspective, one of the tougher of their Ironman swims because of it being, so aggressive, I would say, is how I would describe it. Mm-hmm. The bad news is now you're wet and you have to get on a bike, and it's still only like 39 degrees. And you're on your bike and you're, trying to figure out what to wear. Should I overdress, underdress? Do I wear gloves? How do I do all these things? And so there were challenges with that because, it was Worlds and people wanted to go fast. So they didn't want to overdress and have a lot of wind resistance on loose windbreakers and things of that nature. And, Coach Scott, I know Em had a long conversation with you after her race about how that affected her on the bike.
Yeah, she actually did wear arm sleeves, which would have been a something I would have recommended, and I'm so happy that she did that. Yeah, she said it was so cold on the bike that she was shivering quite a bit, and to the point where she had difficulty controlling her bike. And
that's a scary thing.
Oh, it is. It is. You know, to come back to your comment, Sarge, about pre-race with people using the blankets to stay warm, like shivering is one of the worst things that can happen pre-race or during, just because you end up burning so much energy. You know, it's a reaction of your body to attempt to stay warm.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, the effects can be, you know, difficult from an energy perspective, but then also to Emily's experience, just being able to control the bike, you know, race competitively in worlds, and you start to shiver. And then all of a sudden now you have heightened competition, you have tough conditions. That makes for a tough day, but she crushed it.
Yeah, she did well. I mean, she did even mention that it was harder when she went into aero because of the shivering. That she had to come out of aero quite a number of times just to feel like she was in control of the machine to make sure she was safe. Which, you know, I'm glad that she still produced a great bike on top of a great swim, and was safe. And we didn't have any, luckily with any of our athletes, we didn't have any mechanicals. We didn't have any, you know, crashes or accidents or anything like that. So, you know, that's always a plus for anybody racing and anybody that's a spectator, to have your athletes, you know, stay on their wheels and come all the way around. So that, you know, that was really good. But then the conditions really improved for the run. The run was almost perfect. It was 65, sunny, and, you know, really no problems whatsoever. It was just then a matter of getting it done and hitting all the marks on that. And I think they both did great on Friday. And
yeah, I mean,
Kenny
for Kim and Emily, one last thing on them. I mean, for them both be sub-6, you know, for their year. I mean, what they both did, you know, overcoming injuries with Kim and, you know, with Emily coaching and everything. I mean, both of them showed up, they showed out, dealt with hard conditions in the morning. I know both of the ladies said that the girl savages in the swim were like throwing hands, punching. It was physical. And so couldn't be prouder of them. And it's funny because we also have Ryan. Ryan raced on Saturday, and I think somebody said it in the WhatsApp, but if you were going to blink, you might miss that guy. So I mean, I think Ryan Sipple threw down a 4:27, and you know, it was just quick all the way around. I mean, out of the water, very, very fast. The bike was insane. I mean, I think he averaged almost 24 miles per hour on a really hard course. One of the hills in the 40s was always a very, very slow hill. And I was really curious to see how he would attack it.
Right.
It was taking people 22 miles per hour down to 10, down to 9. And I think, Sarge, you had made a comment on the female side. I hope nothing mechanical is going on in that area, because it slowed down so much.
Yeah, that was our first view of it, was watching the female athletes come through. You know, but I was referencing the pros for our two female athletes to just see how it affected them, and I saw the same thing. So I texted out to our group that, you know, I think they're okay. It's a hill, and it's dragging, but you get a good pickup on the other side. There was 30, 35 mile an hour pickups on the other side. You know, that doesn't always seem to equate equally, though, for the time. Obviously, your pickup's never as good as what it saps from you when you're trying to go up those hills. But it was part of the course. Everybody had to do it. It was a level playing field from that perspective. But, you know, Sips,
he attacked it at 13 miles per hour.
Hell. I mean, he gave it hell. So he did such a great time.
And to his credit, I mean, he selected a race maybe a week before or 2 weeks before, which was the Dirty Dozen, the 12 hardest hills. Some of them were on cobblestone streets. Polish Hill's one of them, you know, and they're all Pittsburgh hills that are very known for high degree of percentages, like a 15, 16% climb. And he attacked that leading up to it. So I had had no problems thinking he was going to shred it, but it was kind of fun. Like I had my bucket of popcorn. I'm watching him go up it,
huge.
Just sitting back and enjoying what he did. And to come off the bike with averaging just shy of 24 miles per hour, and he held a sub 6:30 for his 13.1. We're expecting huge things from him this year. And watch out in the local 70.3 for Ryan this year. Our goal is to take the tape, and he knows it, we know it, and we're going to come for it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I wanted to kick that over to Coach Scott, because there's a couple other folks that race that Coach Scott knows intimate information on.
Yeah. So the first is Evan Davidson. So he just completed his first 140.6 and did a phenomenal job. And the thing that really made it impressive was he was part of the crew that was at Ohio this year, the Ohio 70.3, which I think now we have a reputation as taking over that particular event.
Yeah, that's the Hellions.
Yes,
right? Given to us by the Ironman voice, right?
That's right. Mm-hmm. That's right. Evan had a great race that day. And following that race, he reached out to me and he asked, he was like, do you think we could try a 140.6 this year? And I knew, I was like, man, there's not a lot of 140.6s left in the year that we probably have enough runway to prepare for. And so we had narrowed it down to Arizona. So the race that Kenny, you guys are doing here in just a couple weeks or next week.
Yep.
Or Florida. And so, we kind of went back and forth a little bit, talked about logistics, and then decided, okay, let's go for Florida. At which point Evan said, good, because I already signed up. So
as athletes do to us all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
Nicole Corsi.
So we sat and put together the full training plan all the way right up to the race, because we knew that we didn't have a lot of time to work with, and we knew we had to be on point with everything. And so we talked about, like, here are your key workouts. Here are the real long ones. Here's the speed sessions. And like, it's going to be super important that you stick to the plan. And that's one of the phrases that I use repeatedly with athletes. And Evan nailed it. Mm-hmm. Like he sincerely, like I know that he was having to get workouts in at very odd times, sometimes because of work and personal stuff, but he was so dedicated. And so as we came up to the race, we were both getting very excited because he was nailing everything. His fitness was improving. His confidence was soaring. And so then that led us to, like, all right, let's talk about race logistics. Here's how we're going to manage each segment of the race. Talked about potential obstacles, how we would overcome those. Mm-hmm. Talked about, spots of opportunity and how we would take advantage of those. And he did great. Like, he nailed everything that day.
Awesome.
And the one thing I really want to give him credit for also was the upfront conversation. Like, he was very realistic in that, like, look, I recognize we're springboarding off of my training from the 70.3 into a race that's twice as long over a very short period. So my goal is I want to finish. I want to join the Ironman club. Mm-hmm. I want to get that medal. I want to get that tattoo. And he nailed it. He actually came in faster than we thought in basically everything, and I couldn't be personally prouder and happier for him. He was thrilled.
He nailed it all too. I mean, he got everything. He got his medal. He got his finish, and he got his Ironman tattoo.
Yeah.
And he's tattoo. I love Evan for the sheer fact of how he came to us. I mean, we didn't recruit him. It wasn't somebody from Instagram like I'm, chasing organic down. And he's like, who the heck is this weird guy commenting on every workout I do? And, he literally showed up at a swim that we had our boot camp, up at Moraine, and he was standing on the shoreline and he saw 25 or 30 of our athletes working out, running, biking, swimming. And I think he asked either Sarge or you or whoever it was.
It was me. He came up to me and he said, is this a group? I said, yeah, this is Victory Multisport. We're having a camp weekend. And he's like, well, could I swim with you? And is there a cost? And I said, no, there's no cost. Just come on and swim with us. And it was just a great moment. I think it was very, just meant to be. He was there at the right time, right place, right time, joined in, did the open water swim. He may have went out on the run too. I don't remember. There was so many people there and we were doing so many things, but obviously he enjoyed it. June 2nd and 3rd, he then comes to the team, does Ohio in July, then pulls the "I already signed up" coach, even though we were only talking about it type thing. And now he's done his 140.6. And it's an amazing journey to compress that all into one summer or one 6-month period of time. And which is great. And, we're really excited what that might lead to next. And, I think that the other comment I would make about his 140.6 in Florida was, he had prepared for, the best he could with the advice and coaching. He was also prepared in the contingencies of, we know that course. We've been to that race multiple times. We've seen the conditions that can be perfect one day and not so perfect the next day. So I think he was mentally prepared for the worst, and he didn't end up having that weather, which made it an even more enjoyable experience for him and really put him on a path to come in faster than expected and just have a great day.
Agreed.
I think he's a testament too, though. If you want something bad enough and you play for it and fight for it, that you can go get it. Absolutely. Because Evan didn't have the best bike.
No, he still does not have the best bike.
I think he showed up in Ohio with a bike that had one aero bar on it.
He did.
Right. And so but you can't stop somebody when their mind and heart says I'm in. And that's the thing that I'll always love about that kid is he didn't have the $10,000 electronic gear shifting bike. He had what worked for him. And he came to the dance and said, I'm going to go get this. I want this bad enough. I don't care what horse I'm going to ride in it. I'm going to pedal through it. And I love that kid for that. And I think he's earned a lot of respect inside of the victory walls of the athletes. Everybody watched them. The WhatsApp was blowing up that day. Evan's out on the run. He's killing the swim. Look at him on the bike, and it's a testament that when one guy saddles up to ride, everybody rides. And, Evan has a lot of respect in my heart, in my mind. I love that kid for a lot of what he stands for, and that is I'm not going to back down.
That's absolutely true.
I would agree. And we all do this, as athletes. We lean into the sport, and it comes at a cost. For what it's worth, to add to the respect comment. So Evan is younger. I mean, early 20s, starting his career. Yeah. We've been there. We know what that period of your life is like. He actually took a week of vacation, which he doesn't have a lot for this race. And he drove down by himself. So he loaded his car, said, I'm going to make the drive. I'm going to go to the race. I'm going to burn my vacation. And determination. He was like, I'm doing all of this. I'm finishing. That's right. I'm getting all of that. Yeah. So to see all of that come together, with not only the training sacrifice, but the personal sacrifice. So rewarding. Yeah, so rewarding.
Yeah, for sure.
And so Kenny, to your point about the team coming together, I absolutely love it because the team was going nuts. And so we were just talking about Ryan Sipple, who went out to Worlds and crushed it in under 4.5 hours. He had commented to me, look, I met Evan at the local gym and swam with him a little bit. And so there was that connection there already. I mean, you love to see that when the athletes, have those relationships and know each other. And again, just lean in and support each other on race day. Very rewarding.
And I think I've said that in our 2 years, which is hard to believe how quick it's gone, is we've never had anybody that's like, well, I'm faster than Coach Bowles. I'll take it to him. We don't support that. We support everybody has their own race. Go run it.
Correct.
And whatever that looks like, I may never have a Ryan. I won't ever have a Ryan Sipple time. But guess what? I'm going to be standing in his corner when we go to win that 70.3.
Absolutely.
Because he's going to have a piece of me racing with him. And with Evan out there and Ryan Sipple, who's arguably one of our most talented athletes, that's leaning into somebody that's pursuing something so much bigger than him. It's incredible to me. I love that.
Agreed.
Yeah, it's definitely a group of athletes and individuals that have come together that are here for each other, and we're providing any level of support that any other athlete needs at any moment in time. All they have to do is, make them aware that they're struggling with anything, whether it's advice, whether it's the workout, whether it's transportation, whether it's logistics, whether it's any piece. And our guys and ladies that are on the team are all there for everybody. And it's an amazing to have that kind of support system around you. We had it with each other when we were doing it together, and now to see it in people from all over the country, rooting, going down on treadmills and running that final mile, or, spinning at the same time that someone's on a bike during a race. It's just beautiful.
Yeah. No doubt.
So it's great segue into our next athlete who we just learned this morning has run a Boston qualifying marathon time.
The big announcement.
Yeah.
The big sexy.
Yeah. So Brian Leake crushed it this morning in his marathon and couldn't be prouder. So happy for him. And kind of sticking to the theme of Evan's, progression there from one race into a goal. Brian was very similar. So he, came to us with some training under his belt. He had a couple ultras that he was lining up and, sort of leaned into us for some training advice and plans and whatnot, and went through those ultras and then said, hey, wait, is it possible potentially to take a shot at a marathon with the intent of hitting a BQ? Mm-hmm. And so Kenny and I got him on the phone and we talked through his training, and we started just basically doing a retrospective view of everything he had leading up to that point. So we started with weekly miles. The weekly miles, then we kind of carved apart a little bit from that to ask about what was the variation. And then from there, I gave him a couple workouts. I gave him one speed workout in particular that really pushed him, because I was kind of curious to see how he would respond, and he killed it. And I think that was the moment where Kenny and I were like, whoa.
Yeah. And Scott, I think too, going back to my talks with him and our talks together, I don't know that BQ was even in his mind. I don't think it was. I think with Brian, he's so dang talented. He did a 5:04 in Barrowman with only training for 4 weeks. And I think it was our talk that day at 7 a.m. when we saw him do 19 miles in 2 hours and 8 minutes. And he put a comment like gnarly, like he loved it. And Brian is a maniac in so many ways, and I love him for that. Yeah, he's always ready to hang 10. And he wants to win in life and win in every capacity he's going to go for. But having that team of people to say, whoa. You have something right underneath your nose. Let's go get it. And you had the plan. We had a call with him maybe last Friday or 2 Fridays ago where you laid it down like, this is what we need to do. He's the engine, man. He's the car. You kind of GPSed him to help get him to this. And this is awesome.
To his credit too, I know. So his wiring is that he wants to attack everything. Which I absolutely love in an athlete. Mm-hmm. But that's where a lot of the coaching comes in, because you're like, okay, we're going to methodically go after this, and here's how we're going to attack it. We're still going to attack it, but it's going to look a little different. And he bought in, and it was fantastic. Even we had a really long conversation just a couple nights ago leading into the race about, look, here's what you wanted. Here's how you want to lead into this. Here's the things that you probably want to do. Here are the things you probably don't want to do.
Surfing.
And surfing was one of them. Absolutely. And
he's probably surfing right now.
I
just
hope
so you know.
It's after. So. I told him afterwards, go crazy.
I'm sure he is.
Yeah. But yeah, he did it. He did everything perfect. And even with the race, we talked about, again, you're going to have your opportunity to attack a race and be the wild man that you want to be. We want to harness that and lever that into a fantastic experience. And we did. But we just tweaked a few things. And because of that, he nailed that BQ time. It was fantastic.
I'm trying to get him sponsored by Uncrustables right now, because he's never ate on any of his races. He has never fueled.
Right.
So he ate an Uncrustable the other day, and I think it was like crack cocaine for him. He's sending me messages as he's winning an ultra.
He has run a marathon before, and he said he ran the Marine Corps Marathon at least one other time. And, Brian is a Marine. and he served in the Marine Corps. So he was like, yeah, I'm not drinking any of that water. He said he was slapping the water cups out of the Marines' hands just to show off. But then he like bonked really bad at mile 22.
That's the beautiful thing.
Almost had to walk the last couple miles. And so Coach Kenny and Coach Scott have him eating Uncrustables on his ultras to just keep some energy.
He's sending
and
messages.
carbs.
I mean, he PRs everything. I think he ate a lunch the other day. He sent me a video. It was like 8:34 in the morning. He's like, yeah, Coach, I just PR'd. I ate my lunch way earlier than I did last week. Yeah, I mean, he's just a maniac. But in so many good ways, I think he even ran a 10-miler the week before, and you had him practicing his pace that he would want to finish at, at a certain point. And what I loved most about it, he circled back to help Julia Bird, that was a pretty big race for her, in her progression. She came to us 12-minute, 11-minute miles and was happy with it. Hey, I enjoy it. And then she found out that she could do a 10-minute, and then she's finding out she can do 7s. Mm-hmm. And now she's PR'd her 13.1. She PR'd her mile, a 5K and a 10-mile, all in that race. And Brian circled back after he finished. I think Sipple threw down a 56-minute 10-miler. I think Leak was right over an hour. And he went right back out and got Julia and side saddled him in. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. He wanted to be a good teammate. And not that she may have needed it, but I think he might have made her come in a little bit faster, knowing that she had company coming in there. So that's the stuff that our team embodies, is that willingness to go out and win, but then help others win. And I love it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's been great recapping a lot of the races that we have had recently and the accomplishments of the athletes. And we're so proud of all of them. And we're so proud of the other teammates that have cheered them on, sent them a note, WhatsApped some crazy phrase that just made them smile while they were getting ready for the race, and just got through it with them, either in person or virtually, however they had to support them. And we're wildly proud of everyone for doing that. And we're, so glad to be able to have this team together to make that happen. And speaking of being together, we're going to be in Arizona next week, a week from today. Coach Scott and I are going to travel out to provide that support and encouragement in person. We've going to have family members from the racers. Coach Kenny's racing in his seventh full distance Ironman. We have Snipes coming over from Las Vegas. We have Harley dropping down from Prescott, Arizona.
Harley's first, Kenny's second.
Into Tempe to get this thing going, to light this candle. So we're really, really excited about all of them. And we thought we would talk today a lot about the preparation going into a big A race like a 140.6 Ironman, because we're in the throes of it. We're all helping Kenny here in Pittsburgh get ready in a lot of different ways, mentally, physically, in packing his gear and taking his bike apart and, boxing it up so it can be shipped, and a lot of different things. So we have about 8 subjects that involve the taper and the final prep of going into the A race. And we're going to just jump into that with Coach Scott talking about his philosophies around tapering and how there are differences and they're not all the same.
Yeah, that's right. And, it's really important. I always, mention this to the athletes. It's important to find out what works best for you. There are different philosophies out there when it comes to a taper. The one that I subscribe to is one that works well for me, and I found it works well for others, which is basically it's a reduction of volume, but not necessarily a reduction in intensity. And so leading up to the race, usually a few weeks ahead of time, I'll start to bring down some of the volumes, try to maintain the same intensities, whether it's in the long sessions or within the speed workouts, but maintain those same patterns. And I have found that really provides some momentum going into races. It gives your body a chance to heal, gives you a chance to kind of recover a little bit, be fresh, but yet still have that muscle memory and the capacity to turn it on when you need to. Mm-hmm. However, I have found that some people do really well with longer tapers where they go through a period of maybe being a little more inactive. And again, it just comes down to what works best for you. The way to only really kind of find that also is to race. It's important for athletes to get out there and line up races and go through the experience, and then circle back afterwards and document that information so that they can share it with us as coaches. And then that way, we can work together to get the plan in place that works best for them. Well, we talk a lot about the calendar year coming up for 2023. We're talking to a lot of athletes about, hey, can you identify your A, B, and C races? And really that's important because from a training perspective, you can only peak about twice per year. And those are going to be, fairly far apart as well. They're not going to be piggybacked right on top of one another. And those windows aren't very long either. It's relatively a few weeks. And so what we ask the athletes to do is line up your races, identify your one that's most important, but then also throw a couple others in there as well. And the other races serve multiple purposes. They give the athlete the ability to, just get that race experience, dealing with different conditions like they had at Worlds.
Right.
Going through transitions, working on, what is it like to go through T1 or T2 under a stressful environment. But also it gives us the ability to kind of work through that pre-race stuff with tapering to figure out like what taper works best. And even though it's a B or C race, you still go through like a little bit of a mini taper.
I think it's even, if it's just a training run or a training race, like a 5K, 10 miler, half marathon in preparation for your A race, which might be a 70.3 or 140.6 or something longer, an ultra. You can use those smaller races on shorter tapers, but do the same thing that you're talking about. Scientifically design it and journal it so you're recognizing all the signs and symptoms of how you feel and how it makes you feel on race day. And I've encouraged all of my athletes to do that throughout when we build their plans, regardless of, Katie Freeman is one of the examples. She's going for Muscle Man next year. And we're going to work towards that. But in this, beginning of her training cycle, she's going for some 5Ks. She's going to do a Thanksgiving Day run. And, I asked her, what's the goal? And then we made sure that those few days ahead of that, since it's only a 5K for her, are somewhat of a taper, spaced out, very specific on mileage and effort so that she's ready to go on that Thursday morning and ready to kill it and kill it in her mind and get a goal and exceed that goal slightly. And we're going to make sure she can get there. And it's going to set her up for success to stack now into getting in the pool, getting back on the bike. She's on a trainer now because it's, Lancaster, PA.
Oh, yeah.
It's a little bit chilly.
Yeah.
And then come right around on the beginning of the year and go for it. So it's very, very important.
It's important too, when you're tapering, to recognize that physically you're going to feel a little different and mentally you're going to feel a little different. And it's good to get comfortable with both of those feelings. Like I know based on our experiences, there's a little bit of you'll feel your body, almost sort of healing itself. You can feel a little bit, like you're cramping at times or, you feel just a little bit different.
You get the muscle spasms in
That's
your
right.
calves that while you're watching TV, you're like, what is this doing? Well, it's reworking everything. It's rebooting. It's, adding fiber to that, adding those muscle fibers in there.
And then from a mental perspective, you're accustomed to these heavy volume, these heavy blocks that you've been going through. And now all of a sudden you have less volume. You have a little bit of time on your hands that you didn't before. You have to make sure that mentally you're staying engaged and focused and that you're staying true to the patterns that you were maintaining through your training. So a lot of success from endurance sports, and this is true of all sports, really, it's based on patterns. And you'll find, if you were to go back and reflect on your training for the year, it's likely that a lot of your successful workouts came as the result of patterns. So you would have some recovery, you would go through a hard workout, you have some recovery, you go through a hard workout. All of that strung together will reveal different patterns. So when you come into tapering, even though the volumes are less, you still want to maintain the same patterns. You don't want to start filling that time with things that you haven't done during your training, because that while you think you may be adding value. The reality is you might be undoing some of the benefit that you were working to
going
build.
to the gym and lifting heavy.
Correct.
Right? Because
That's
you have
right.
extra time.
That's
no
right.
need to do that in a taper.
Or eating things that you're not accustomed to. You know, I know for me personally, when I'm training,
Swordfish at Lake Placid.
you know, I'm used to burning a lot of calories through a full Ironman training session. So when I go into taper, I need to be conscious that I'm not still eating more than what I necessarily need to, and then I'm maintaining healthy eating habits and all of that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's good. I think the psychology of the taper, there is a change. There is a mental change and a mindset. I think it's also a great time to, you know, use those extra minutes or hours that you are now relieved of from doing volume to make sure that you're doing maintenance, to make sure you're rolling if you roll, make sure you're stretching if you stretch. Don't do it for the first time on your taper, but if that's something that is in your routine, you can focus more on those maintenance items, which is going to allow that recovery and that building and really what we would call super compensation to occur prior to, you know, hitting that race.
Agreed.
So that's really, really important. That leads us to one of our other points, which was nursing, right? Nursing an injury or an ailment that might be out there. You know, we've recently had to deal with saddle sores. We've recently had to deal. How, Coach Kenny? Anything about that?
Yeah, you know, I had it, I have it, and it's gone. But I've been dealing. This is the first time truly I've raced as a coach in a big race where I've had to look at a taper a little bit different. And, you know, and I'm hoping I see the race a little bit different than I did as an athlete, because I've gone through it countless times with athletes this year that have done 140.6, 70.3s. You know, one of our female athletes had a saddle sore as well. And we kind of went through it like, let's not have you ride. Let's get that thing healed. Let's take time away from it. Let's rest our legs. Let's focus on the swim. Let's focus on the run. So I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, I once said that to somebody, and it had Coach Bowles had to say, maybe you shouldn't ride. So still I'm reluctant, because I'm thinking, okay, all of this, and now I stop riding is me missing a Wednesday to Sunday ride. Is that going to hurt me? It's not mentally, but I know that it's healed. My issue is I didn't want to have the pain at mile 1. If I'm going to have it, let's get it at mile 80 or 90, and I can deal with it for another hour. Mm-hmm. So it's the little stuff there of understanding, hey, and I think one of the things as I started to realize, just hearing Scott say that, is you do have more time on your hands. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I've been doing is taking in a lot of the emotions that I've been feeling, because I've felt a lot of them. I felt at times ready to fight, at times angry, not angry, but like inward. I guess inward would be the right way.
A little on edge, agitated.
On edge is a good way to say it. And it's funny because just in talking to Harley, I think we spoke on Tuesday morning, and I had thrown brownies away at my house that were a few days old, and Say was like, did you throw those out? I normally don't care about brownies. And I'm like, yeah, why? And she's like, well, I was going to take them to Spencer's birthday. And I'm thinking, why would this even bother me? Why am I mad right now? And it's because my mind knows and my body knows something is going on. Mm-hmm. So fast forward to the next morning, Harley calls me, and he said, hey, Monet and I were jabbing it up a little bit about stupidity, like something stupid in the house. And I go, Har, it's because you're starting to focus on this race. Mm-hmm. And he's like, oh, that makes so much sense. And it's that mental side of it, because you know you're about to endure something big, and you know it's coming. And it's almost like being in the ocean where a big wave is going to come crash over you with overwhelming emotions of on edge, happiness, and then the water's going to be super clear at times where there's nothing, and you're like, oh, I'm just going to race next weekend. So it's definitely really weird, and I'm going through all of it right now.
Right. So there is, if we studied it, and I'm sure there's been studies on it, there is a a life cycle that you go through in the psychology. I actually, in the notes, I wrote psychology/psycho, because you get psycho at points in it. And, if you can be self-aware that that's what's causing it, then you can manage your family life, your work life, and you getting to the race a little better, even though it's still going to happen. And because you're getting so worked up, you're getting amped up, your brain is constantly thinking about, how am I going to get to that first buoy? How am I going to make that turn? How am I going to, strip my wetsuit off? How am I going to get my shoes on? You're going over that over and over and over again. And you're, looking at different aspects of it, whether it's your travel and logistics to get there and you're hoping your flight's not late or, whatever. And, everything is just, you want it to be just right. You want it to be laid out in a way that's going to allow you to have the best performance. So you're getting amped up about all the details and everything. So it does happen. Those of us here at the table and others, I'm sure on the call or on the cast today, your spouse will understand it. If you've raced more than once or twice, they get to know it. I know Sayward says, "Oh, are you inward now, right? We can't talk to you." My family knows those 2 days before, don't ask anything. Just go. If you want to go do something, just go. I'm taking care of this. I'm going to, turn my bike in. I'm going to do my 20-20-20. I'm going to, step through everything. My bike's going to fall over one year and I'm going to have to fix it myself in the basement of the rental house and get, so those things are all going to happen. But just being able to recognize it, Coach Scott.
Coming back to Kenny's comment about the injury, it is important for athletes to realize, especially as you're coming into the taper and you're approaching the race, if you do have those nagging injuries or something even that pops up at that point, if you have to pivot your training, so Kenny, you mentioned you're not going to ride for a few days, it's okay.
Yep.
Your fitness base is established. Realistically, there's nothing that you're going to do in those last couple weeks that's going to really make a difference on your performance. And I know there's a lot of sayings out there. You'll hear people say, hay is in the barn, the cake is baked, all that stuff. Realistically, though, it's true. So, and the reason I mention it is because for an athlete out there that's dealing with any sort of, last minute, but minute being the last couple weeks as you're coming into a race ailment, the best thing you can do is heal up. That's because one of the goals is to get to the starting line healthy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so if that comes at the expense of, hey, I have a few less runs or a few less bikes or a few less swims, and I just go heavier on one of the disciplines versus the other, just so I'm maintaining the fitness and psychologically I'm staying on point, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's all right.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in structure, but also, there's a little bit of art to the science. At times you have to pivot. You have to have that flexibility in there. And you'll find that all will still work to your benefit. Even more so if it gives you the opportunity to heal. So you are dealing with something potentially at mile 80, 90, 100 versus mile 1.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Give you half an hour to sit in an Epsom salt bath, right? Just to help it heal up.
Yeah, that was great. Hey, can you pick up Epsom salts? Why? What are we doing? And I'm like, why? I have a saddle sore. Do you want to see it? No, I don't want to see it. Tanza wanted to see it. He's such a maniac. He did. Right? He's such a maniac.
Yeah. But it is true. It's absolutely true. And I think that also brings us to even sleep that week of, if you're able to sleep, awesome. Take it. Right. If you get so worked up that the night before it's a little bit rough. I know, Scott, you have a philosophy about sleep.
Yeah. And I've read this in a number of different spots and have experienced this personally myself. The most important night of sleep is a couple nights before. That if you go back 2 nights, if you're sleeping very well, then you're in great shape. The night before, if you sleep lousy, it's okay. It doesn't matter. As long as you're rested coming into that night before, then you're in great shape. I actually ran one of my best half marathons, sleeping only about 3 hours the night of because I was so nervous. But fortunately, that week leading up to it, I had multiple nights of 8 hours plus, so I was very rested. So just again, as athletes come into races, if they get jittery the night before, if they're getting up frequently to go to the restroom or they just can't settle down, it's okay. Don't worry about it.
I can tell you just from, my experience in the military, plus my Ironman experience, when you're going to go out on a mission, like you don't even sleep, even though the mission might be a week long, and you're going to have to put this effort forth, and you're going to have to perform and you have to do all these things. But you have so many things going through your head. You have, especially if it's a true mission, and you are going into a combat situation, your mind's racing. You got a lot up there. It doesn't mean a hill of beans once your feet hit that field and you're on there and you're doing it. If you're trained up, you're going to respond to that training. Your muscle memory is going to kick in. You're going to do well, and you're going to execute. So it happens in all different types of scenarios. The closest I've come to it in the civilian world is really Ironman and leading up to Ironman, because, especially one of my first ones, it was so unknown. I had trained, I had done 100-mile bikes. I had been with Kenny. We did hurt lockers in the basement, on treadmills and back and forth. I think we had you in a baby pool to measure your sweat, I think, one time, Coach Scott, right? We were spinning so much, but, it happens, and it's going to be okay, to your point, if you're prepping up right.
You bring up a great point, and it's something that I do also stress with the athletes, and that is before you race, and even during your race, and this is going to sound kind of contradictory to a lot of things we've said here, but there's nothing magical about it, the actual execution of it. It's the same things that you've been doing. And the reason why I say there's nothing magical is because you should have a lot of confidence. Like when you're swimming, you've swam thousands of times leading up to this race. It's nothing that you're unfamiliar with. The bike, you've biked hundreds of times, thousands of times. You're out there biking. It's no different.
Yep.
Running, same thing. The execution itself is something that we collectively have worked to prepare for together. And therefore you should be very, very confident. Now, I will say, when you cross the finish line, you'll cry like a baby, and dude, you should. I mean, that is phenomenal.
Yeah.
But really, just during the pre-race, you're standing on the starting line, and your nerves are going through the roof. Just take a deep breath and remember, I've done this. I'm ready. During the race, remind yourself. Think of your favorite routes. Think of your favorite running route. Break the marathon down into segments of your favorite running route. Break the bike down into your favorite courses. The swim, just picture yourself back in the pool that you've trained in for months. You do that, that'll bring you back mentally to a place of comfort. And quite honestly, a relaxed athlete will fundamentally perform better. So just remind yourself, get in those places.
I think one of the biggest stressors that we run into in life, but also with the athletes, is the self-imposed goals or aspirations, or just if I don't get this time, it's going to be a terrible day.
We've had it. We've been there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's 100% not necessary. It is 100% not necessary to put yourself through that pre-race or in race and during race. It is 100% necessary to have the race plan and have micro goals that stack on each other throughout the day.
Agreed.
Right? I'm getting up at this time. I'm going to have my, pump my tires at this time. I'm going to eat this, and I'm going to get dressed, or, I'm going to do all these things, and I'm going to be at the starting line. I'm going to get in this corral. I'm going to swim this way. My expectations, I'm going to swim this way, and my goal is to get to that buoy, and then to get to that buoy, and then to get out of the water and move on to the next thing. And by having those, it creates the possibility of other things coming in, whether it's weather, whether it's a GI issue, whether it's a mechanical on the bike, whether it's whatever it is. I mean, I'm in Lake Placid swimming. Kenny's there, tugboat's there, and there's lightning hitting the lake. I don't know this. I'm swimming in the rain. It doesn't matter. I'm already wet. But they throw us out of the lake sideways. I have to run now 1.25 miles to get to my bike. So it's a completely different day now. So that whatever time that was on my chart or on my whiteboard or in my head or, on the back of a napkin, I don't care. It doesn't matter anymore because now it's become a different game, right? And now the game is I'm going to still beat this thing. I'm still going to accomplish this. I'm still going to make it. I'm just going to do it in a different way because, the nature is putting new things in front of me. It's burning the furniture in front of me. I got to get around it. So it happens. And there's thousands of iterations of that. And I'm trying to make sure we talk about not over stressing at the beginning.
Great. Yeah, that's a great term to apply to it because I will admit I'm guilty of it. Like I put time goals out there for everything. And the way I think about them is I incorporate it as part of my training. And so I know that if I'm training and I'm hitting certain marks, it's going to increase the probability that I'll hit the time goal, but it doesn't guarantee it. There's no guarantees.
Correct.
But to try and shoot for it, I think, again, I think it has to be part of your plan. I think it's okay, but you can't let it consume you.
Correct.
Because if you do, then it's almost like the needle's going to move the other direction and you're probably going to fail. So
there's physiology that happens. There's mental aspects that happen. And if you're in a race and you're mad, you're not going to perform. You're just not. You're going to be tight. Your vascular system's going to react in a certain way. You're going to be, frankly, your brain's going to be releasing different chemicals. Your body's going to be releasing different chemicals to try to fight it. So you're getting into these weird areas that are 100% counterproductive to the full-on performance that you really are trying to go after. So the guys that we see the best days from are the ones that are smiling the whole way through the race. Guys, girls, the athletes. If they're happy that they're here, they're in the moment, they're accomplishing whatever the task at hand is, they're knocking down things, they're ticking goals off as they're going through everything. They have the best day, they have the best times for themselves personally, they perform the best, they get on the podium when that was in the plan to do, and it really, really works. It really, really works.
Yeah, I think one of the things too that I try to say is it's no different than if you're playing baseball. If you're nervous and the first pitch goes off, it's the game you've played over. So as soon as the first pitch happens, the first tackle, the first whistle goes off, the first run up the court, like you're in the game. So I know right now I race very emotional. I know it. And there's something with that I look for. I hunt for. So I don't hunt for the pain. I hunt for the emotions. The emotions to me make me feel alive. So when I was at mile 70 the other day and I'm feeling this dang saddle sore and I want to get off the bike and I want to quit and because I started at 3:45, I woke up, I wanted to go to sleep. Like literally I have 3 towels on my arms and I'm putting my head down to kind of rest because I want to be done. Like I'm hurting. And then a song comes on that's Hillsong, Awake My Soul. And I start crying, like weeping, like actively weeping. And I know that's God's gift. That's him saying, you're there. You are right in. This is what I'm hunting for. Like that unique space of running the other day, listening to Revivals in the Air, because, I think of our team and I think of the way they've stopped on a dime of their bad habits or the way they were going or the downward trajectory that they said they were going down and now it's an upward. And I think of that and that's my joy of getting to do this race. I don't care about the race. I don't care about the 40.6 miles. I know it won't be a PR. And I'm proud of the fact that whatever finish I get this year, I've had that 11:30. I've had the 12:15. I've had the 12:34s. I've had the 15 hours. I'm happy with whatever I get because guess what? I'm racing for 85 people. And I know that. And there's going to be a sleeve that I have. It took me an hour and a half. I have 90 to 100 names written on it that are athletes that have lined up to race, coaches, people that are important, people that have gone before me, people that like I will be thinking of that person. And like all of the stuff, like, yeah, the saddle sore, it stings. But guess what? It's an honor to wear it. And being being able to feel alive and to cry because emotions hit me. And racing for Say's brother, who we lost 2 years ago, Thanksgiving, that's the stuff that I'm here for. I already know Mike Tanza said, I'm going to run the last 10 miles with you. And I know it. He's going to be in his jeans. He's going to be on a treadmill, and he's probably going to get Ben Hawley, and he's probably going to get ice, and he's probably going to get McClurg, and there's going to be an undertaking. And I understand that. And being able to see Harley and all that that guy stands for 6 times on the bike, and we're going to be yelling back and forth at each other. And it's an honor to me whether he finishes first, I finish last, Sniper finishes first, to come across that finish line with any of them. To have our crew there, our coaches, our family, that's what I'm there for. The taper for me has been unique because I've got to feel alive again. Like when you race this race, it's a scary race, it's a scary distance, but to feel the emotions that come with it, that's what I'm here for. I'm not here for the 140 miles. I don't like it. I don't like the 100-mile bike ride all by myself on a trainer. I like riding with Andrew Petcash and Jeff Nelson and Matthew and I want that, and that all comes with it. So the taper for me has been very unique because I've dealt with a little injury. I've had to deal with the time on my hands that I've used to say, okay, I want to think through the execution of the swim. I'm not scared about the water temperature. I'm not scared about what the current's going to be like. Get me to the buoy first. And what I'm now worried about is, am I going to wear gloves on the bike? Am I going to wear socks on the bike? You know, it's those little things. Like our first timers, Don in Meadville, he sent me a text, hey, I'm not going to do my first 70.3 in Colorado. Too much dynamics of getting stuff there. That's one of the big frustrations with Arizona is packing a bike, taking luggage, making sure all my equipment goes, the food. Like that's one of the things like first timers, race local. Get that first one under your belt. So like,
it's awesome. I mean, you know, we just talk so much about the logistics of getting to races and the gear and what do you take. And then when you get there and you're presented with weather conditions or temperatures that you need to make changes. So, you know, one of the philosophies that we've talked about this week with Kenny is, you know, better to have it and not need it than to wish you had it, right? So bring the gloves. Whether you actually use them or not, it doesn't matter today. But you have them with you, and you're not trying to scramble going to Walmart and find gloves in Tempe, Arizona somewhere. You've got them in your kit. You put them in your suitcase. You're shipping them out there with you, and you have those. You can make a decision, game day decision, based on those conditions, based on even your 20 and 20 the day before on how that feels. Because you're going to go swim for 20, you're going to bike for 20, and then you're going to run 20. That's going to give you that chance to try that and know that that's going to work or not. Oh, that felt like hell. I'm not using those. You can always pocket them. And if you don't need them later in the ride, you can always pitch them at a water station and ditch them. You know, that's okay. So those are the kinds of decisions you need to make on a gear, especially if you are traveling too. You got to make those early because you're not loading them in the car. You're not driving them there. You're trying to check them in luggage and those kinds of things. But it's really, really important, you know, same with the bike, you know, making sure that you've got it set up. And Kenny just rode his today for, 3 minutes just to check it out before we take
in my Jordans.
In your Jordans, but just to make sure before we take it apart and put it in a box and ship it out there that, you're comfortable with it. And
saddle sore was good, man. I didn't even feel it.
Ready to go.
And I honestly think I've probably got the dang thing because I've had to do every ride indoor. And sitting in one area, like not riding up the hill, getting able to stand, like just getting trapped. Like I honestly, I swear.
Could be. Could be.
It's brutal. Do you want me to send you a picture, Sarge?
No, I'm good, bro. I'm good. So thank you, though.
Okay.
I love you, man. So, Coach Scott, you had a point about the psychology, or you were making one, right? Or not. What about gear?
Gear for me, I subscribe to the same philosophy that you guys just laid out. It's always better to over prepare. And if you don't need something, you can always peel it, not use it. If you don't have it, then you leave yourself subject to potential problems.
No new gear.
Yeah. You know, the point about getting, upset with not hitting a particular goal.
Right.
The one thing that I always tell myself is when I figure out that I'm leaning into that space during a race, the first thing I say to myself is relax. Because once you start getting upset,
it's going to wire out.
Yeah. And Kenny, I think you made the point about physically, you start to feel that effect. Yeah. I mean, I know as a runner, the minute I get upset about not hitting a particular goal, my hands come up, my breath gets a little shorter, and both of those things make you less efficient, which actually are counter to the goal that you're trying to achieve. Right. So I just, in my head, I just always repeat, relax in that moment. And sure enough, I start to drop my hands and I start to get my breathing under control, and the performance comes back. So yeah. And can you bring up also a good point too about tapping into the emotions, the emotional side of it? There are things that you can do that will help you race day. So one of the things I always did during my Ironmans was I'd have my daughters write notes all over my water bottles.
Love it.
And so one of the funniest ones was somebody wrote "Eat my dust" across the back of it, and they told me I had to put it on the back so whoever's behind me sees "Eat my dust." But yeah, just little notes like that to make it personal. That's always nice, because when you get into a race like that, you want to be able to, again, you're tapping different sources of motivation. And it's nice to be able to just to do that.
Yeah. So, and I'm reading them all. And I encourage anybody that hears this week, if you want to send me a text, direct message, hit me up with something that is important to you. Josh Herbert sent me a beautiful Bible verse, Joshua 1:9. Have I not commanded you to fear not type? He's like, I said it the whole way in the Ohio swim. And, so that's going to be important. Ryan Sipple sent me a text. He's like, you're going to find peace in the darkness. And he said, when you go dark, that's when you'll meet up with God, and God will walk you through it. And he knows as well, because he races on that spectrum of that suicide pacing. And, so we're going to find it. So like, I love it. I encourage that type of stuff. So anybody wants to send it, please. I'll be looking, sharing. And I think this week too, I have about 10 to 12 things in my Instagram that really meant something to me this year. And you'll be seeing them on my story of just things that I'll be thinking of, or things that might help me out in that day, just sharing those.
And you've always done that. You've always been, very open about how you approach the race and how you, go out and meet everybody and talk to everybody. And, it always gives other people energy, throughout the time I've spent with you doing that. And it's always a good experience. We've really never had a terrible one. We've been able to manage through all different conditions, and the times we've raced and the times I've spectated for both of you guys. We even in Muskoka, we had torrential rains prior to.
Scott had rain in his wheels.
We had water in our race wheels. We had to do all kinds of things, but we always got through it, and we had a good time doing it.
Yeah.
So one other thing for those that are traveling in two races, and I know we're flying, all of us, and Kenny's flying, and Kenny's flown for running races before. I don't know if you've flown for your own personal Ironman. Is really the self-care that it takes to travel well as an athlete. We talked before we started the cast today about if you are prepping for a race and you're traveling, put your compression socks on, put your compression sleeves on your calves. Definitely hydrate, because airplane air is super dry because it's at altitude and there's not a lot of moisture in it. And you will get dehydrated just by sitting on a plane for any amount of time.
Yeah,
see, flight attendants always have a liter of water with them on their kit because they experience that all of the time.
I have to take blood thinners, actually, because I got a blood clot from the flight to Bermuda after the marathon. So
right.
I'll be on those starting Thursday until
just precautionary.
I fly back. Yeah, to just try to help, so nothing gets dehydrated.
Right. And then just so taking care of yourself throughout the journey. And this last part of getting to the race, to your point, Scott, of getting to the starting line healthy is super, super important. And we just wanted to make sure we brought it up today as part of prep, as part of taper, and part of all of that. Kenny, you said it real quick. I don't know that the listeners heard it, but you said something about gear.
Yeah, no new gear. So we had one of our guys train for Boston, Hags, and he read something that he should put Vaseline all over his feet before the race to help, so no blisters. Well, he got all kind of blisters, and he shouldn't have done it. you never did it in his training, and all of a sudden he changes up on it. So I'm not going to be wearing anything different. I'm not going to be training in anything different. I'm going to use the same tailwind, the same Brooks, the same tri-suit. Mm-hmm. I'm going to use a new Rudy helmet, but I've used the wing before, so I know what that's like. So
yeah, I think that
fundamentally, just remember, especially when you get into an Ironman race setting, you're going to see thousands of people doing all these different things. Stick to your patterns. It's your race. It's not their race. So whatever has worked for you, that's what you do.
That's right.
Yep.
You're going to see all kinds of gear. You're going to see bikes that have other whiz bangs that you don't own. Do not buy them this week or, for this race. We're talking about Arizona, but the week of your race, there's vendors at the Ironman Village selling all kinds of things. If you need a new something that you already use, get a new something that you've already used. That's fine. But you don't need anything additional. You don't need any new stuff hanging on your bike. You don't need any new nutrition that you haven't tried and trained on. So that's just our advice. We've seen it happen more than once. We've probably fell victim to it once or twice. We know people that have tried to put lube on their feet the day of a race and never done that before for some reason. And I don't know that he's still right after that. So
I'm not going to lie. I might have told Harley, though, he's worried about the water temperature. And I told him, I said, I think I'm going to swim with one of those swim caps.
Chin straps.
The chin straps. It's thermal. We did tell you, I think, that we were going to swim with 3 swim caps on in Maryland.
Yeah.
So there might be a couple shenanigans.
Shenanigans, but we're not going to let him in the water with. Yeah. Well, maybe Harley. He loves that stuff.
Exactly. So, but if you were going to wear that chin strap thermal cap, wear it,
Vaseline under your chin. You don't want chafe there.
Just race how you train, and that's exactly what you want to do. Just don't get.
I think it goes back to what Scott was saying. Don't eat something different.
That's right.
You stay a little bit of chicken the night before the race, that type of thing. So just stay your course.
That's right. So that's really our version of taper, our version of prep, our version of the collective experience of the 3 of us and how we've raced and trained and learned and studied this sport throughout our 12-year plus careers of doing these things. And we're really happy to celebrate our athletes that recently raced and have accomplished some huge things as late as this morning, getting a BQ on the board. We'll submit that in, have him submit it, and get his spot for Boston 2024, hopefully. And so we've had a fantastic time this afternoon talking to everyone. Thank you for tuning in and listening to episode 3 of the Victory Multisport podcast.